Should Ukraine be given nuclear weapons to defend themselves against Russia? If you think no, drop a 1 in the comments. If you think yes, drop a 2. But wait until you see the latest policy shifts, the major escalations coming out from the Biden administration in the last 24 hours. I'm going to be sharing with you the latest articles and video footage so that way you can see it for yourself, as we are hearing that at this very moment there are emergency meetings taking place with what is unfolding between Russia and Ukraine. And we are also hearing that Vladimir Putin, Russia, right now, they have given a very strict, stern warning specifically to the United States with what is unfolding. And I'm seeing those ones pouring in as people are saying, no, Ukraine should not be given nuclear weapons at this time to defend themselves. Like I said, I'm going to be sharing with you the latest so you can see it for yourself. Let's take a look at the latest headlines that are coming out. Now, as you can see here, NATO is to be holding an emergency meeting after Russia uses intermediate range ballistic missiles on Ukraine. We are hearing that these type of missiles have never been used before, never been seen, and they are warning that they cannot be stopped, and this is being confirmed. Now, take a look at this with me. This headline coming out from the New York Times in the last 24 hours. Trump vows to end the war and could leave Ukraine with few options. Now, we're going to take a look at this here. There's something very specific I want to show you right now. But first, let's give a little bit of context. You'll recall that earlier this month, you can see November the 1st, NATO or nukes, while Ukraine's nuclear rival refuses to die. And we had heard that Ukraine had vocalized that they either must have acceptance into NATO or they must receive nuclear power to defend themselves. Here it says either Ukraine will have nuclear weapons and then it will be able to defend us, or Ukraine will be in NATO. NATO countries are not at war today. So we had heard that they said this was the ultimatum. Either we receive approval from NATO or we receive nukes. And this is because, as you will recall, back in 1994, they gave up their nuclear power. And they received a promise from the United States, from the UK, and from Russia. It was recorded in the 1994 Budapest Memorandum that in an act of good faith, they yielded over all their nuclear powers, saying that we must receive protection for doing this on behalf of the world. And now they're saying that this has turned around to bite them doing this. Well, take a look at this article that just came out in the last 24 hours as they are discussing the plans going forward for Ukraine, what the United States is planning to do. And I'm just going to jump all the way down to the bottom to show you this one part. We're going to cover the details of this here later on in the video, but just take a look at this with me for just a second here. In this article, it says, so U.S. and European officials are discussing deterrence as a possible security guarantee for Ukraine, such as stockpiling conventional arsenals sufficient to strike a punishing blow if Russia violates a ceasefire. Several officials have even suggested that Mr. Biden could return the nuclear weapons to Ukraine that were taken from it after the fall of the Soviet Union. So we are now seeing that they are saying that the Biden administration at this time is considering giving the approval to return nuclear weapons to Ukraine so that way they can fully defend themselves in this conflict that people are saying are escalating into World War III. And a matter of fact, we are actually hearing that Putin has said this is a global war. World War III has broken out. In 2024, Ukraine's former commander-in-chief is saying it is official. They are saying World War III is here. I also shared with you that Germany is preparing 800,000 troops at this time from NATO to go down to Ukraine to fight against Russia. We're hearing that Switzerland, Norway, Finland, they are handing out pamphlets to their citizens saying stockpile and prepare because World War III is here. Global conflict, nuclear war. It has arrived. And let me know your thoughts in the comments one more time. Do you think that Ukraine should be given the ability to defend itself with nuclear warheads? If you think no, put a 1. If yes, put a 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But like I said, I've got video footage and articles I'm going to be sharing with you so that way you can see the latest for yourself. And if you appreciate that while you're dropping those 1s and 2s, take a quick second for me. Just takes a quick moment, helps out the channel a ton to hit that like button. Spreads this out further so more people can get the latest information. In addition to that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? I'll keep you up to speed on everything here on the channel. As you know, I cite everything like a book report. Every source that I reference, I put it on the screen, read right from it, hyperlink it, so that way you can see it holding myself accountable to the community, so that way you can rest assured that it is the latest information. And also, thank you for the super chats. YouTube let me know that those also help spread this out further. Appreciate it. Pamela Hill, the $5 super chat. Kyle Brown, thank you for the $5 super chat. Kyle says, what the heck is Biden thinking? Why are they, Biden and Harris, pulling this stupid act? What are your thoughts, Steve? Everyone, deep prayers. Thank you for the super chat. And Kyle, I agree with you. I think that this is going to be extremely escalatory. And it just feels like right now Biden is leading us to World War III. This is what we're seeing across headlines around the world right now. This is not just the opinion of the United States. We are seeing this. I shared with you headlines coming out from various nations around the world that are saying that Biden has approved nuclear war. He is sparking World War III with the major policy shifts that he is making right now, approving the use of long-range weapons, which we heard was a red line for Ukraine. Now also approving anti-personnel landmines to be used in Ukraine, which they're saying this is a major policy shift and very escalatory. Russia coming out and dropping that intermediate range ballistic missile on Ukraine, which they said had the capabilities of having a nuclear warhead and causing massive damage. This was messaging from Russia, and now Russia coming out and warning directly the United States, we will hit U.S. facilities and assets. We will respond very decisively. The United States, you better be very careful of your next moves. These are the warnings coming out from Putin. Biden just pushing forward, escalating things significantly. And as the headlines had stated, Donald Trump saying he would bring peace. He would negotiate a deal within 24 hours between the two. However, with what's going on, it seems that Biden is almost sabotaging these potential peace talks that we had heard Trump said that he would do. And a lot of people saying this is just absolutely throwing a wrench in the plans that Trump had said. And they are saying this could even delay the transition of power. If we enter into all-out global conflict in World War III, Biden would then be leading the United States in World War III. Many asking for him to step down, impeaching him, they're saying, for starting World War III, which then would mean Kamala Harris would be our president as we enter into war for the United States. So a lot of things are escalating. And Kyle, you're not the only one that is vocalizing that concern for what is going on. People are saying, what in the world is Biden doing? And now, as I mentioned, I just shared with you the headlines coming out in the last 24 hours from the New York Times. They are saying that Biden could be giving the approval to provide nuclear weapons back to Ukraine that were taken away in 1994 to allow it the right to defend itself. As Ukraine had said, nukes or NATO. And at this time, it does not look like NATO is an option. So Biden potentially could be agreeing here. They are saying, we are hearing rumors. Now, just to clarify, this has not been made official, but they are saying that this is being taken into consideration, the U.S. handing over nuclear weapons to Ukraine. And this would be a major, major shift in an escalatory policy shift by the United States. And as people are saying in the comments, Russia will not be happy with this. We will see what could unfold here with this escalatory move. So like I said, though, let me go ahead and share with you the latest information so that way you can see it for yourself. They're going to be linked in the description. Put it on the screen, show you the latest video footage. As I mentioned, right now an emergency meeting is taking place as we speak with NATO regarding what is unfolding. So let's go ahead and dive right in. And if you haven't done so yet, take a second, please hit that like button. 3,000 people live with me in the room, 762 likes, and subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. As I mentioned, I just report the news and just share with you the sources from where they come. So let's go ahead and start off with the emergency meeting, and then we're going to get into how Putin is vowing that there will be retaliation very decisively, warnings to the West. Let's go ahead and get right to it so that way you can see it for yourself. Let me just switch over these monitors and let's play the footage.
NATO is set to hold an emergency meeting on Tuesday after Russia tested a new intermediate-range ballistic missile on Ukraine. The new missiles have the ability to carry nuclear-capable weapons. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the launch was in response to Ukraine's recent use of long-range missiles provided by the U.S. inside his country. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now from the Pentagon. So, Charlie, what What does the fact that Russia is testing these intermediate missiles signal to Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies? Does it change the trajectory of this war?
It does, Lindsay. It does. For the people that I've spoken to, while some U.S. officials say Russia likely only possesses a handful of these experimental missiles, I've been told they pose a unique threat. So they're capable of reaching 3,000 miles. They carry a multiple payload system. It's called a multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles. This is important because as the missile descends, those multiple warheads can be released at different speeds and different directions, potentially spread over 1,000 miles. So that, combined with its lofted trajectory, challenges even the most advanced of Ukraine's air defense systems. So the missile that we saw at Dnipro focused on one area, and we've seen some of the video. So it came overhead and then unleashed 6 warheads down to a concentrated area. It's unlike anything that they've seen on the battlefields of Ukraine. And yes, the term that they've used here, they're not worried, but they're concerned.
Could Russia essentially decimate Ukraine with a handful of these missiles they have left?
Well, Lindsay, not decimate, but just for instance, right? So we've seen, and I've been there, when Russia has unleashed a number of, S-300 missiles, which are anti-aircraft missiles. They get plenty of reach. They get the Shahed Iranian drones that can come in. But say Lviv, right? Lviv is way far west, very close to the Polish border. This comes in at a different trajectory than a cruise missile, which is easier to intercept, and the missile defense systems are in place to do that. But if Russia were to launch a number of these missiles at the same time, Ukraine would really struggle to take them down. And this, I think what we saw at Dnipro, we're only talking about maybe 750 miles from Russia. They could throw anything at Dnipro, and they have. I think that was messaging to say, this is what we've got, and this is what we can do with it.
How is Ukraine expected to respond?
Well, mostly they'll be asking for more defense systems. They're going to need, Patriot defense systems, and they're going to need real defense. There's concern. For the first time, really, I believe, since the war began, they had to shut down their parliament. Just yesterday, the United States shut down its embassy. We had a warning that a new missile was going to be tested days before it happened, and we reported that. So that just shows you that in a place where air raid sirens are pretty much a fact of daily life, some people don't even rush to the shelters. They are now because of the unpredictability of what this weapon poses.
South Korea says Russia supplied air defense systems to North Korea in exchange for troops to support the Kremlin's war with Ukraine. What more are we learning about this?
Yeah, so this came from intelligence and South Korean Foreign Ministry, who essentially underlining what they said was going to happen, certainly with the United States and others were worried about. North Korea sent 11,000 troops to Russia. They immediately started saying, well, wait a minute, what do they get in return? And this seems to be an indication. So they have anti-aircraft missiles that are being supplied to North Korea. Not that big a deal, but in terms of the technology, what they're more capable of, North Korea's got their own air defense systems. This is new because it's Russian. They're also trading technology. According to the same statement, the Russians are providing North Korea with oil, and that is against sanctions. Not that it much matters with those two countries, but that's that sort of cooperation. This is a two-way street. 11,000 North Korean troops, when you consider tremendous losses that Russia is suffering, is really just a drop in the ocean. You have to ask yourself what North Korea is getting in exchange for that.
Ukraine is hoping for concrete and meaningful outcomes at next week's emergency NATO meeting. What is Kyiv asking for? They're going to be asking for more of those defense systems?
Lindsay, that is, I just read that statement, and that's where the statement ends. But it's a refrain that we've heard time and time again. They want concrete productivity out of these meetings. They can't have platitudes. NATO is concerned. Poland especially is concerned about the development of this new weapon. Russia has got plenty of weapons that can reach NATO countries. It's what this weapon represents. And I keep drilling down about this. The United States just had a $275 million aid package promised to Ukraine. There's something like $5 billion in aid on the table right now. It's called a surge that the Biden administration said that they want to get to Ukraine. And the clock is ticking. You know, the Ukrainians know it. The Russians know it. We're headed to a new administration. Nobody's entirely sure whether that support for Ukraine will continue past January 20th. So there's very much a hurry-up offense, but particularly with the development of these new weapons. You know, the United States has allowed these ATACMS, longer-range weapons, to be used on Russian soil. Yep. That's a major development, and it's one of the reasons that President Putin said he's unleashed this new weapon directly because of that in Britain's Storm Shadow. So we have seen a huge escalation in the past week or so. Ukraine's been out of the headlines for a long time. We have teams there once again. This is front-page news. We're talking about it now. This is going to accelerate and increase as we get closer to January.
Charlie Daggett, thank you so much.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And you heard him say that one of the major concerns right now is how Ukraine will defend itself in the future. And they said there needs to be some major policy changes here. So as I mentioned, we're going to get to that article here in just a second where they're discussing the way forward, what the United States has taken into consideration, and how it is that the Biden administration is even saying that Ukraine in 1994 gave up their nuclear weapons for the promise of protection from the U.S., the U.K., and Russia, and that now has been breached. And Ukraine had said there were only two ways forward, either approval from NATO or receiving nuclear weapons. And the United States, we are hearing, is taking into consideration allowing Ukraine to have back the nuclear weapons that they had and that they gave over in an act of good faith in 1994. And let me know your thoughts again. Is it a good idea for Ukraine to receive nuclear weapons to defend themselves against Russia? If no, drop a 1. If yes, put a 2. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at the warnings that we have now received from Russia, so that way you can see it for yourself what they are currently saying, as they are warning the West, the United States directly, saying you need to stop escalating the situation. And as I mentioned, headlines coming out around the world right now saying Joe Biden is starting World War III. Joe Biden is provoking nuclear war. The world right now is pointing their finger at the United States with the decisions, the major policy shifts that are taking place with Joe Biden. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video footage so that way you can see it for yourself. This also coming out just several hours, maybe 7 hours ago today.
Russia's responding to Ukraine's use of long-range U.S. missiles against targets deep inside Russia now by firing a new kind of medium-range ballistic missile into Ukrainian territory. Putin is calling the move a warning to the West. Comes after President Biden this week authorized the use of U.S.-made long-range missiles for Ukraine to strike inside Russia's Kursk region for the first time. General Jack Keane points out that Putin's specialty is combining just this kind of kinetic action with psychological warfare. Listen.
He's forced the Biden administration never to give the Ukrainians what they wanted when they wanted it, and it protracted the war. So Putin keeps coming. And that's what this is all about. Russia fully intends, after the Ukraine is finished with, to expand into Europe. And all the European nations know that.
Well, senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott's tracking the latest developments. Greg, what can you tell us this morning?
Jillian, just over 1,000 days into this war, and it's getting riskier all the time. More shockwaves from yesterday's strike by a brand new kind of Russian intermediate-range super-fast missile. It caused some damage and casualties in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, but also carried with it a big message. Just days after the U.S. and the UKAS allowed the use of its longer-range missiles inside the territory of Russia, Moscow basically saying anything you can do, we will do, with an even bigger punch. Russian President Putin on TV last night saying in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, he will respond decisively and reciprocally. His spokesman adding today the actions by the U.S. and its allies were reckless, noting Russia had demonstrated its capabilities and could do more. An indication of the nervousness. For the first time since the war started, a session of Ukraine's parliament was canceled due to fears of another attack. Yesterday's Russian missile carried conventional warheads but could be nuclear armed. Yet another message. And remember, earlier this week, the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv was shut down out of security concerns. Diplomatic voices around the world speaking out today. The Prime Minister of neighboring Poland said the threat of a global conflict is serious and real. China of all countries, calling for calm and restraint. And Jillian, as for North Korea, which has been adding to all the tensions by sending some of its troops to fight alongside the Russians, said the U.S. is stoking tensions, and they warned of a nuclear war. A lot of talk and some very dangerous actions. Back to you.
Look at Beijing weighing in there. Got to leave it there. Greg, thanks so much. John.
All right, let's dig deeper on this now. General Keith Kellogg's a former national security advisor and Fox News contributor. It's been a minute, General. Welcome back to the campaign trail.
Good to be back.
Good to see you.
Ukraine's ex-top general says World War III has begun. I'm sure that he would like the world to believe that so that the Allies throw in with Ukraine, but do you really see it that way?
No, I don't think World War III has begun, but we're right on the precipice. I mean, it's right there. And what I mean by that is when you look at what's happening, look at the alliance. What President Trump kept apart, you know, he had North Korea over here, he had China over here, he had Iran here, and he had Russia over here. And what you've seen them now is they've all joined. You've got an axis together, and they're feeding off one another. You know, just in June, Russia signed a self-defense pact with North Koreans. So now, for the first time in its history, North Korea has exported fighters into Russia. Between 10 to 30,000 North Koreans are now fighting. You're seeing a use of an intermediate-range ballistic missile that can be nuclear-tipped, being shot at Dnipro, a city of around 900,000. So you're seeing this thing starting to build. And that, I think, internationally is going to be President Trump's biggest thing he's going to have to solve, which is the fight there in Ukraine and Russia, which happens to be the largest land war in Europe since the end of World War II. Yeah. So it's massive. So, and John, you know this, a simple spark can spin things right out of control. And without even trying out there. And
you assassinate one archduke and suddenly...
Yep, absolutely.
Good, touche. General, talk to us about this new sort of sophisticated weapon that Putin is now. He launched some kind of medium-range ballistic missiles with a lot of warheads on it into Ukraine. Can you talk to us in layman's terms what it does and how alarmed people should be about it?
It's an intermediate-range ballistic missile based off range, and it's got MIRVs on it, multiple independent reentry vehicles, so more than one warhead. It can
Meaning
be
they
nuclear
can split up and hit a whole lot of targets?
They will break off and hit multiple targets. And again, it can be nuclear tipped. But they only used one, and it's basically a class of what they call truck-mounted intermediate-range ballistic missiles that they've got there. He's used it for psychological reasons, and Jack Keane made a great comment on that. He didn't use it because it was militarily effective, because it hit a city, not very much damage there at all. But he's kind of saying to the West, well, see what I can do. And this is one where people have backed off. President Biden's backed off. When the minute he said IRBM, ICBM, nuclear war, we said, oh my gosh, we can't go there. That's when you need to lean in, because he meaning Putin, he will not start a nuclear war in Europe. And you'd remind him, let me make sure you understand. The Brits have nuclear weapons, the French have nuclear weapons, we've got nuclear weapons, don't go there. And we haven't really said that to him. So it's kind of a psychological play, and I think Jack Keane's got it right. So he's kind of upped the ante in weaponry, just like Zelensky upped the ante when he went into the Kursk region with the long-range missiles. He attacked them.
So everybody's wondering why Biden suddenly gave permission to Ukraine to launch these attackers deeper into Russian territory. Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about that yesterday at the briefing and gave a typical answer. Listen here.
For a long time, the White House argued that using these long-range tactical missiles into Russia to attack targets inside Russia would escalate. The war would really invite retaliation. Why change the policy now?
I'm just not going to get into specific about Ukraine's operations. Not something that I'm going to do today. But I want to be really clear.
But I guess I'm asking about the specifics of the White House's decision to change policy.
I'm just telling you that I'm not going to get into specifics from here, from the podium.
Yeah, so that's what we've kind of gotten used to, saying nothing about everything. But why now? I mean, he's left this pile of dog, you know what, on Trump's doorstep.
You know, John, here's what I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that Jake Sullivan talked to Michael Waltz, who's the incoming national security advisor, or President Biden has talked to President Trump and said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm really hoping that happened, because what he has done, Biden, through his action, he's actually given President Trump more leverage.
Really?
Because now he can pull back, he can go left, he can go right, he can do something. And I think what he did is he basically said, well, this is what I want to do. And I'm hoping there's something to this. I don't know, but it does give the President Trump more ability to pivot from that.
Oh, that's interesting. All right.
Just one quick question before we let you go. We have like 5 seconds, General. But so you're not buying the White House's, the Biden administration's justification that they approved these new long-range weapons because of the North Koreans on the ground inside Ukraine?
It sounds good, but Jillian, what I'm really hoping is there was another reason to it, which gives leverage to President Trump. Maybe that may be a good reason to do it. Look, they should have been doing this a year ago. But they've basically pulled back. You don't fight a war allowing other countries to have sanctuaries. If you're going to fight a war, you fight a war. And we've basically pulled back on letting Zelensky fight a war that he should have been fighting a long time ago. And the casualties are horrific.
Yeah, of course.
But the advantages that he had this last summer are not there anymore, he meaning Zelensky.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't heard from Trump on the use of the attack.
And I think it's real. My thoughts to that are it's very smart.
Okay.
Hold fire.
All right, good. General, great to see you back.
Great to see you, sir. Thanks for
See
joining us.
more of you in the future.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian
So there you
Kilmeade.
have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts. We heard that things are escalating. And in addition to that, for those of you hopping on a little bit later, I see that we've got over 4,400 people live with me in the room. The question that we are posing right now is this: should Biden give nuclear weapons to Ukraine? If the answer is no, drop a 1. If the answer is yes, put a 2. But what we are about to take a look at right now has come out in the last 24 hours from the New York Times. And in this article, they pose the question, should this unfold? Because right now they are discussing what is going to be happening with Ukraine moving forward. And we are hearing being taken into consideration right now is giving Ukraine nuclear weapons to defend themselves against future threats from Russia. Let me put it on the screen here. And as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at this in more detail. I'm going to be covering this full article for you. But it says, so U.S. and European officials are discussing deterrence as a possible security guarantee for Ukraine, such as stockpiling a conventional arsenal sufficient to strike a punishing blow if Russia violates a ceasefire. Several officials even suggest that Mr. Biden could return nuclear weapons to Ukraine that were taken from it after the fall of the Soviet Union, returning nuclear weapons to Ukraine so they have the ability to defend themselves against Russia. If you think no, drop a 1. If you think yes, drop a 2. But a little bit of context for you. And Julia, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. I see you with that super chat. Thank you very kindly. Right now, there is an emergency meeting taking place with NATO discussing what has unfolded over the past couple days with Ukraine and Russia. And in addition to that, this is all because, as I had mentioned to you, NATO or nukes is what we are hearing. Why Ukraine's nuclear revival refuses to die. This coming out November the 1st, 2024. Now, you'll recall I shared this with you a couple of weeks ago. Ukraine had said either nukes or NATO. If we are not approved into NATO, we need to have nuclear weapons to defend ourselves. Now we're hearing that NATO does not look like it is currently an option. Biden is saying he agrees. Maybe we should hand over nuclear weapons back to Ukraine, who in good faith gave them up back in 1994. They were the third largest nuclear force on Earth, gave them up with requesting protection from Russia, the United States, and the UK. And they did this in good faith, and now they are saying, well, they've been burned by this. Now it is time to give them those nuclear weapons back, give them the ability to go ahead and strike. We are hearing that this is being considered by the Biden administration. But before we dive into that article, take a look at this one, giving a little bit of context. As I mentioned, coming out a couple weeks ago, recently, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky alarmed international audiences by alluding to the prospect of Ukraine's nuclear rearmament, saying we need nukes or NATO. Now, addressing a European Council meeting in Brussels on October 17, Zelensky invoked Ukraine's decision to surrender nuclear weapons inherited from the Soviet Union in exchange for security commitments from nuclear states. The United States, the UK, and Russia recorded in 1994 Budapest Memorandum. China and France pledged similar security assurances in separate letters as well. The Budapest Memorandum commitment failed spectacularly to prevent Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So how does Ukraine provide for its security? Zelensky outlined two options. Either Ukraine will have nuclear weapons, and then it will be a defense for us, or Ukraine will be in NATO. NATO countries are not at war today. All people are alive in NATO countries, and that is why we choose NATO over nuclear weapons. However, at this time, I'm going to share with you in just a second here what the Biden administration is saying with some major policy shifts that could be coming. Now, on the same day, Zelensky revealed that he had delivered a similar message to presidential candidate Donald Trump during a visit to the United States in late September, and added that Trump responded that his reasoning made sense. However, at a press conference with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte later that day, Zelensky walked back his comment, emphasizing that Ukraine has no intention to pursue nuclear weapons. Ukraine's foreign ministry rushed to confirm the country's commitment to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, or the NPT, as a non-nuclear weapons state in a separate statement. So they're saying they walked those back, but now we're hearing the United States is taking it into consideration. Zelensky's rhetoric could be read as either a credible threat or a desperate bluff to convince the West to extend to Ukraine an invitation into NATO, the number one item on Zelensky's recent unveiled victory plan. But perhaps it is none of that. Zelensky's recent declaration may be a reminder of Ukraine's contribution in good faith to nuclear non-proliferation in the early 1990s, of its dire security predicament today, and of the need to find a solution for Ukraine's long-term security and to maintain sustainable peace in Europe. Man of Steel, thank you for the $2 super chat. Can the president make these decisions alone? Well, we've been hearing that these decisions have currently been made, that he is saying provide them with long-range nuclear missiles. Go ahead and give them the anti-personnel landmines to use. And now we're hearing he is also saying, hey, give them back the nuclear weapons that were originally theirs back in 1994 that they gave up in good faith. Give it back to them. Let them defend themselves. So as I mentioned, let's go ahead and take a look at this article. And again, let me know your thoughts. If you think that Ukraine should not have these weapons, drop a 1. If you think that they should have nuclear weapons to defend against Russia, put a 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And while you're doing that, do me a favor, if you haven't done so yet and you appreciate the updates, take a quick second, hit that like button for me. Spreads this out further. I appreciate it a ton. Subscribe if this is your first time here. It's totally free. You can stay up to date by hitting subscribe. And let's take a look at this article here that I've got up on the screen. And as I mentioned, we're going to get to this. This is the part here. Several officials are now even suggesting that Mr. Biden could return nuclear weapons to Ukraine that have been taken from them after the fall of the Soviet Union. So this article is discussing the policies moving forward, the transition of power between Trump and Biden, and a lot of people saying this is making it extremely difficult for Donald Trump to come to some sort of an agreement. It says it is leaving Trump with few options, or Ukraine with few options, as Biden is pushing forward with what they're saying is extremely escalatory, major policy shifts. And around the world, we are hearing that Biden is bringing about World War III and nuclear war. 2 years ago, General Mark A. Milley, then the chief military advisor to President Biden, suggested that neither Russia nor Ukraine could win a war. A negotiated settlement, he argued, was the only route to peace. His remarks caused a furor among senior officials, but President-elect Donald Trump's win turning General Milley's prediction into reality. Mr. Trump has made clear that his distaste for continuing to help Ukraine take back territory seized by Russia, making a negotiated settlement the only real viable option left. Now, the ascendance of Mr. Trump as Ukraine suffers losses on the battlefield, in fact, means less room for Ukraine to maneuver. One of the biggest unknowns for Ukraine is whether the Trump administration and Europe will provide any kind of security guarantees that would prevent Russia from trying to take more territory. Mr. Trump has said that he would end the war quickly, though he has not explained how. But Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has outlined a plan that would allow Russia to keep the Ukrainian territory that it has taken. So we are hearing that they have drawn up some form of a peace agreement, and it includes Russia seizing the land that they have captured so far and essentially giving up to Russia what they have claimed. A phone call just after the election between Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine shed light on the question of security guarantees. Aides to both men simply described the phone call as positive. Now, some officials in the Biden administration have suggested taking more assertive measures in the remaining 2 months they have to help Ukraine, such as allowing the country to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles to strike inside of Russia for the first time, which we have now seen unfold. In recent days, Mr. Biden authorized the use of those missiles, as I just mentioned, known as ATACMS, for Army tactical missile systems. Ukraine used them on on Tuesday to strike an ammunition depot in southwestern Russia, according to Ukrainian officials. On Wednesday, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III said the Biden administration had approved supplying Ukraine with American anti-personnel mines to bolster defense against Russian attacks as front lines in Ukraine's east buckled. So it just seems every single day we are seeing massive policy shifts taking place that are escalating the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. But Mr. Biden's last-minute steps to give Ukraine weaponry it has been requesting for years are unlikely to change much on the battlefield at this time. The White House has said that it allocated the remaining $9 billion in security assistance before Mr. Trump takes office. Of that amount, the administration plans to give Ukraine just over $7 billion worth of arms, munitions from Pentagon stocks, and about $2.1 billion to order more weapons from U.S. defense contractors. In meetings in Kiev last month, Mr. Austin and top Ukrainian military officials discussed which arms and munitions the United States was likely to send in the next 5 months, or roughly through March, so that Ukraine's commanders could budget their war plans accordingly. Now, of course, the new administration could put those shipments on hold, but Pentagon officials have expressed confidence that it would be challenging for the Trump administration to suspend aid that has already been approved by Congress and set into motion. Now, in another shift this month, the Pentagon said that it was lifting a ban on U.S. military contractors deploying to Ukraine to help countries' military maintain and repair U.S.-provided weapon systems, particularly F-16 fighters, jets, and Patriot air defenses. The Defense Department is soliciting bids for a small number of contractors who would be far from the front lines and would not be fighting Russian forces, a Pentagon official said. Pentagon officials are aiming to award contracts before Mr. Biden leaves office, though the process typically takes 4 to 9 months. Several U.S. companies already have personnel in Ukraine fulfilling contracts for the Ukrainian government. The administration's decision to allow Ukraine to use ATACMS missiles to strike inside of Russia was a major change in U.S. policy, and we are hearing this is a huge shift. A lot of people saying this is taking us into World War III direct conflict with Russia, and people are asking why, oh why, is Biden doing this weeks, months before a transition of power? It came partly in response to Russia's decision to bring North Korean troops into the war, officials say. So they're saying that Biden is justifying this move, saying we are going to be escalating things, supporting Ukraine even more so. Why? Because we are seeing that Russia is receiving additional outside support from North Korea, and they are saying, so this is a tit for tat. This is a justification of escalation of the conflict. However, we are hearing that now Putin is coming out and saying, as of yesterday, November the 21st, that this is becoming now officially a global war. Mr. Biden and his top aides had repeatedly rejected such requests from Ukraine, arguing that the Pentagon had few of the missiles to spare and that Ukraine could more effectively hit targets deep inside Russia with the one-way attack drones it manufactured in large quantities. Now, but the escalation risk of allowing Ukraine to strike Russia with U.S.-supplied weaponry has diminished with the election of Mr. Trump. The Biden administration officials believe, calculating that Mr. President Putin of Russia knows that he has to wait only 2 months for a new administration. Mr. Trump is believed to view Russia more favorably, and his choice for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has often repeated Kremlin talking points. Even with additional aid, officials in the intelligence community, as well as the Pentagon, say that it will be difficult for Ukraine to regain the ground that Russia has steadily seized over the past few months. Ukraine is losing territory in the east, and its forces in the Kursk region in western Russia have been partly pushed back as North Korean recruits join in the fight. Sagging morale among Ukrainian troops and uncertainty over Mr. Trump also continue to threaten their war efforts. The Ukrainian military is struggling to recruit soldiers and equip new units. The number of its soldiers lost in action, about 57,000, lives ended in action, about 57,000, is half of Russia's losses, but significant for a much smaller country. U.S. spy agencies have assessed that speeding up the provisions of weapons, ammunitions, and materials for Ukraine will do little to change the course of the war in the short term, according to American officials briefed on the intelligence. But speeding up U.S. weaponry in the waning months of the Biden administration could help Ukraine enforce a ceasefire or armistice line if there were to be a settlement, officials have said. Now, the one gold standard security guarantee that Ukraine wants is an invitation to join NATO, as we mentioned. So this is getting down to the core of the issue here. Ukraine is saying they want to join NATO, but it could not get that under Mr. Biden. An invitation is unlikely also during President Trump's presidency. So they are saying that this is their last resort, and that is why Biden is taking this into consideration. We've reached the highlighted part. So the U.S. and European officials, they are currently discussing the deterrence as a possible security guarantee for Ukraine, such as stockpiling a conventional arsenal sufficient to strike a punishing blow if Russia violates a ceasefire. Several officials even have suggested that Mr. Biden could return nuclear weapons to Ukraine that were taken from it after the fall of the Soviet Union. That would be an instance and a numerous deterrent. But such a step would be complicated and have serious implications. So I would definitely say that would have some massive, serious implications if the United States was to equip Ukraine with nuclear weapons. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, Andrea Zogarganik, a former Ukrainian defense minister, said in an interview that for a successful ceasefire, Ukraine and its allies must reverse the momentum on the front line to set conditions for talks. Ukraine must also have sufficient firepower in reserve to deter any ceasefire violations, he said. For example, with an arsenal of long-range weaponry to inflict immediate damage if Russia resumes their hostilities. Wow. So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. We are hearing the Biden administration taking into consideration giving nuclear weapons over to Ukraine. Absolutely massive, massive news. Huge escalatory news. Policy shifts that, as the world is vocalizing right now, is leading us down a path towards World War III, nuclear war, global conflict. This is some major, major news coming out here. It just seems like every single day we're seeing a new form of escalation that is coming out. We had heard that Biden had approved long-range missiles to be used by Ukraine into Russia, U.S. long-range ICBMs. Then in addition to that, those ATACMS were used. Then we saw them use it with the UK. And then we saw the U.S. approve those landmines. And now we are hearing that Biden is taking into consideration the approval of giving over nuclear weapons to Ukraine. And we are hearing that Russia is directly warning the United States that this is a global conflict and that there will be decisive responses to what is unfolding. And again, these warnings coming out directly to the United States. But the U.S. and other nations, NATO, they're taking into consideration what is going to be the long-term deterrence for Ukraine. And they're saying if they're not getting a NATO approval, well, then they should get approval for nuclear weapons. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. It is escalating significantly. Never before have we seen so much talk around the world about nuclear war, World War III, and what is currently taking place right now as the United States, they are pointing the finger at us, saying Joe Biden is causing this to explode right now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, you guys. In addition to that, if you missed my video earlier today, we're also hearing that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have warned about holiday potential attacks on U.S. soil that could be coming for physical attacks, cyber attacks. We've got potential World War III, and there is a caravan right now coming through Mexico to come across the southern border into the United States. There was supposed to be a hearing taking place, testimonies yesterday. The head of the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, they flaked. They were a no-show. At the last minute, they decided not to show up. It enraged members of Congress, outrage, fury over this response as they are saying, we're on our way out. We've testified over 30 times. We've let you know about the threats that are currently posed to the U.S. we've got nothing more to say other than there could potentially be holiday attacks. So if you missed that video, you're going to want to check it out right after this live stream. I will pin it in the comments so you can check that out as well. Did an update for you on that this morning. Leighton Hutchinson, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Economy is unstable, world war, political tensions, nuclear threats. God is watching and protecting his people. Answer his call before it is too late. Prep. Amen to that. Thank you so much for that $5 super chat, Leighton. I appreciate that a ton, and I will continue to keep you guys up to speed here on the channel. But that is the latest. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to hit the like button. 8 more likes, if you haven't done so, gets us to 1,900 while we are live. I've seen we've had well over 4,000 people while we have been live here on the channel with the latest updates. Thank you so much for the support. If you appreciate the updates, please hit that like button. Subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? I'll keep you up to speed on everything. And these articles that I'm referencing, I do everything like a book report, so you know it's the latest. I put all my sources, link them, hyperlink them down in the description so you can click them, read them for yourself, put it on the screen, read right from it so you can know it's the latest. Also, additional resources linked down below. There are Black Friday specials coming up from Amazon all over, so check out these links if you want to stock up. Maybe you can get some good deals right now because we're hearing that other nations are warning their citizens, get food, get water, get prepped, get ready. At least a week's worth of supply. They're saying this in Switzerland, in Norway, in Finland, in Germany. They're preparing troops. Nothing, silence right now in the United States. So it makes me feel like if you're a U.S. citizen, you're kind of on your own. The government is not saying anything about potential warnings. In Russia, they are preparing shelters, nuclear fallout shelters, can supply for 54 people. They're moving these all around, mobile shelters for individuals. They almost look like those shipping containers, but they're supposed to resist nuclear radiation and explosions and weathering. None of that here in the U.S. So my thought would be we are on our own. We have got to supply and prep for ourselves and our families on our own. So additional links down below if you are interested. Also, free power grid guide that we created. Also, lifesavervault.com if you or a loved one needs additional medications. All that is linked in the description below, so that way you can check it out for yourself. But that is the latest, you guys. I will continue to keep you up to date as more information rolls out, and we will see what decisions Biden makes here. Who knows what's going to come tomorrow? Well, whatever it is, I'll be sure to keep you guys up to date here on the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Subscribe, hit the like button, and I will catch you in the next one, you guys. Take care. God bless.